I think we do get caught up in the, well, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't be eating this, I should be doing this, I should be taking this medication. Spirals that happen when you start to connect with other people in the chronic illness space. But don't compare yourself to others. That is the thief of joy, and I know that's something we've heard time and time again. That's sounding far too preachy, and I hate that. But meeting this girl at that time, I'm so appreciative of, because I think it embedded in my brain the fact that we simply cannot compare ourselves to someone else just because they have the same disease as us. Hello and welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. I'm your host, Alex Wildeson. Whew, it is good to be back in the saddle. I took last week off because, as you guys know, if you follow me on Instagram, I felt like utter ass. That prednisone taper, it did its job. I really committed to the bit, did my part, put all of my effort in to make myself flare up, and I succeeded. In fact, I got a gold medal, first place. I'm not competitive at all, but I won, to say the least. But I think we, knock on wood, avoided the hospital trip. Thank Jesus. Anyways, last week, I was going to record a podcast episode about the silver linings and positives that I'd learned from forcing a flare-up, because at that point, I was feeling like $1,000,000 and like I had conquered my chronic illness and life with autoimmunity. But my shit got rocked, as you guys know. I felt so bad. My pain was out of control. The fatigue was debilitating. Headaches, itchy skin everywhere. New vasculitis, rashes, nodules, marks all over my face and legs. Yes, my concealer and my foundation, which I never wear, working overtime. You can't even see them right now. Anyway, so TLDR, it's harder to look at the positives, and there was just no way in hell I was going to record that podcast episode authentically, which is just very chronic illness coded. Enough said. We are pivoting, but it's still kind of a lesson, I guess, in and of itself. And that is that chronic illness just doesn't make sense. It's not predictable. It's not something that's easily understood by us or others. And I think it's good to just call that out and know that that is okay, because that's part of this all. And I think the first days of being chronically ill, your first symptoms, your first experiences, even before diagnosis, you are living that truth, that chronic illnesses don't make sense. You'll do something that's strenuous one day, and the next day, you expect to feel terrible, but you feel fine. And then a week later, you had a duvet day, and then the next day you feel terrible. None of it makes sense. Same thing goes with food and restrictive activities. Same thing goes with food or restrictive diets. Our bodies change how they respond to things seemingly at the drop of a pin. And so when all of those things stack up where A plus B does not equal C, for outsiders, it becomes increasingly harder to understand life with chronic illness. But candidly, living with the chronic illness, it doesn't make much sense to us either, no matter how the cookie crumbles. And so that's what we're going to get into this week. Why chronic illnesses don't make sense. But before we do, you know what's coming. Housekeeping! If you guys wouldn't mind rating the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening, leave a review or a comment. That would mean the world to me. It helps this podcast get ranked, which pushes it out more. And hopefully gets to the ears of somebody who needs to find this community, because damn, this is a really good community. And speaking of community, if you have not joined the group chat on Instagram, send me a DM. Come join, come hang out. It is a safe space to ask questions, to vent, to cheer each other on. And it's usually where I go and announce events that we're doing, sales by our favorite brands, stuff like that. Speaking of sales, I have some good Alexis picks for you guys this week, because when we're flaring, we need all of the TLC. My first pick of this week is Conrad compression socks. They are amazing. I had never heard of them before. Tried my first 2 pairs on. One was like a foot compression sock, ended at the ankle. You could wear these when you're running, walking, out and about doing errands. My second pair goes above my knee, the very standard kind of compression wear socks that we're all familiar with, know and love. Guys, these are so comfortable, which feels oxymoronic talking about compression socks. Usually I find them to be incredibly uncomfortable to wear. These are soft. These are very, very easy to put on and take off. These also come in nude colors or fun patterns. So whatever you're looking for, they most likely have. and I definitely had some relief using their compression socks. You can use code AlexWildeson20 for 20% off at checkout. My second pick of the week is Cadence. If you guys have not heard of this company, get ready to have your mind blown. Cadence has these very amazing, stackable, safe twist storage containers that are perfect for traveling, but even more importantly, perfect for the chronic illness girlies go bag for infusions, ER trips, or hospital stays. They are leak proof. They are idiot proof per my experiences with them. I love these things. I was gifted a set at Christmas last year, so if you want them, make sure you send that discount link during the Black Friday sales to your friends and family and put that on your holiday wish list because these are amazing and your go bag needs them. Side note, speaking of sales, Black Friday and whatnot, my team has been putting together the ultimate Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Sephora, Nordstrom, all of the holiday sale gift guides, shopping guides for you guys. So make sure you're checking out socials. We'll be releasing them there. And then we're going to be releasing some very special drops on our Substack. So if you aren't a subscriber there, head on over there, subscribe, and you will get some goodies as being a subscriber to the Substack, which is free. And in our gift guides, we have everything from the cheapies that are on mega discount that you should stock up on during this time period to the higher sticker price items that you've probably had on your wish list for a while. I will have sale discount codes for all of it. So keep your eyes peeled on the Instagram stories on our Substack. Okay, so let's get into it. I broke down 4 reasons why I think chronic illnesses just don't make sense. PSA at the top. These are my own thoughts and reflections on why I think chronic illnesses don't make sense. There are ultimately a million reasons why they don't make sense, but this is my own experience and the boiled down ideas that I had. The first reason why I don't think chronic illnesses make sense is because how we live our lives is confusing to other people and to ourselves because our bodies are so unpredictable. When I first got sick, I tried to figure out all of the different triggers that could possibly make me flare. Foods, exertion, travel, work, emotions, sleep, everything and anything. And I really tried to control all of those different triggers. But as time went on, I still found myself flaring up. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, doesn't matter how much stuff I control, my body is unruly and it is the one in charge, not me. And I wish I could say that dawned on me like a year or 2 into living with chronic illnesses, but no, it hit me around year 20. And now I'm 25 years into it and I still struggle with don't fight the flare, just flow with the flare, because that's actually how you get through it. I think some of the biggest lessons that I've learned being sick for this long is that you can do everything right and still flare up, and alternatively, you can do nothing right, absolutely nothing, and not flare up. It is that unpredictable. And the more time we try to sit down and figure it all out, I find that I spiral. And I spiral into anxiety, into depression, into frustration that is uncontrollable about not having control. And honestly, that's kind of a waste of spoons. So I think the more time we spend trying to figure out how to make our chronic illnesses make sense, or alternatively, the more time we try to spend living a life that makes the chronic illness somewhat make sense, the more anxiety we end up carrying, which then inevitably makes us flare up. When I was still working in corporate America, I had this boss that every single Monday he'd stop by my desk and ask me what I did. And for a very long time, aka the first 2 years I was working there, I would not really share that much because I didn't do that much. I lived in a very tight, narrow box so that I would not flare up because I had this very deep fear that if I did something fun over the weekend, flared up on Monday, I would not only have guilt that I had spent my spoons incorrectly and prioritized something incorrectly, but that my bosses and my colleagues, they'd see that I had fun on the weekend and then was missing work and they wouldn't get it. But over time, like I shared, I started to shift out of that. I started to live a little bit louder. I started to shift my priorities and realize having fun on the weekends was something I was supposed to do. Living a life where I was just working and being sick was not that enjoyable. And then Monday would come around and I'd have to Zoom with my boss because I didn't have the spoons or energy to even get myself into the office. And we would chat and I could see frustration in his eyes. Like, why was I able to go do something over the weekend, but had to work from home then in consequence. He was frustrated, right or wrong. I was frustrated because I felt like I didn't have the permission then to live a normal life like everyone else. But I think if I had sat down and just said, look, you're not going to understand this because I don't understand my own body, but I am not sacrificing my entire life to just being sick or just working. I need to be able to have fun sometimes. And if that means I'm going to spend some spoons on the weekend to go to a dinner from 5 to 7 p.m., I don't need to justify why I can't drive into work this Monday. I'm just going to work from home. And I need you to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, that's also okay because I'm going to have FMLA protection and you can go and fuck off. But I was, in my young 20s and there was no way I was going to have the balls to say that. Alex, now, I think I would be able to have the balls to say that. I love throwing the bird or a little F-bomb around. Really shocks and jars people. But that's a very long-winded way to say that chronic illnesses don't make sense. And if we try to live in a way that makes them make sense to other people, we are letting our lives pass us by. And you're not put on this planet to live a life that is acceptable to other people. You're put on this planet to go and do your own damn thing. So putting that additional layer of guilt that we have to live a certain way to be acceptable or whatnot is just not worth our time. Because even if we act that way, we still might flare up. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to be 80 years old, having spent my entire life trying to live by someone else's book about how I was supposed to show up or live with a chronic illness. I'd rather just say fuck it and do my own thing, pay to play when I do, and also rest when I need to. And on that note, even within the chronic illness space, we're all little snowflakes. You can have two people with the exact same diagnoses, and it's going to show up completely different. They're going to have different medications that work for those two individuals. They're going to have different lifestyle things that they have to do, different diets they have to adhere to. They might even have a difference in how much that disease impacts their quality of life. Now, I remember going to college, and I, for the very first time in my life, befriended somebody that also had an autoimmune disease that was 18 years old. And what was shocking to me was that she was able to live a much louder day-to-day life than me. But when she was down bad, she was down way worse than I had ever experienced or even knew was possible. She had had so many spine surgeries before turning 18, but she was in this remission-like state. So she was on really, really kind of lightweight autoimmune medication where I was on some heavy hitters. And I had to really manage how I was living my life. It was shocking to me in a way that made me realize that everyone is really unique in their experience with chronic illness. And that also means that each of us are allowed to live in a way that feels right to us. And it's not up to anybody else, even if they have the same diagnosis as you, to tell you how you should or should not live your life or what you should or should not do. Find the medications that work for your own system. Find the lifestyle that fits you and helps you feel better. Do the diet or restrictions that are best for you, your lifestyle, and how you want to live. And don't live by someone else's playbook because that's just a waste of time. Now, I'm saying this, but I want you guys to know that this is an ever-evolving thing to come to. I still struggle with making myself live too small of a life. And I'll look at somebody else with my same disease and go, well, how are they able to do that when I'm doing this? If I learned anything from this forced flare-up episode that I've just had to go through, is that I need to regularly reevaluate the restrictions I self-impose onto my life. Otherwise, I think we do get caught up in the, well, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't be eating this, I should be doing this, I should be taking this medication. Spirals that happen when you start to connect with other people in the chronic illness space. But don't compare yourself to others. That is the thief of joy. And I know that's something we've heard time and time again. That's sounding far too preachy, and I hate that. But what I realized from meeting and befriending this girl that was also autoimmune was that comparing myself to her and how her disease had presented did nothing for me. I didn't need to change my medication. I couldn't do the same lifestyle as her. But meeting this girl at that time, I'm so appreciative of, because I think it embedded in my brain the fact that we simply cannot compare ourselves to someone else just because they have the same disease as us. There's so much bio-individuality that comes into play with chronic illness. And so if we are to do anything, I think it's maybe to listen and look around to see what other people are doing and try them out on ourselves if you want to, and then see if it works for you or not. And if it doesn't, then leave it and let it be. It's not for you, and that's simply okay, because all we need to do is figure out how to feel better for ourselves. I know, so simple and easy, but in all seriousness, comparison is the thief of joy. And so if you can recognize that we're all snowflakes, I think it becomes easier to understand that we're each supposed to find out what works for us and build our own toolkit, and that's enough. But one thing that we do all share is the language that we use to talk about living with chronic illness. However, everybody outside of the chronic illness space is not in on this language that we speak, which probably confuses them a hell of a lot more. A great example of this is when you are hanging out with a friend who works in a totally different industry than you. Like Cooper, for example, he works in tech. There are words that he will say that go way over my head, and I just nod along and say, "That's great, honey," and hope that that was something that I was supposed to say, "That's great, honey," too. But in all reality, I have no idea what the fuck he's saying. There are words that we say in the chronic illness space that others have that same reaction to. And the biggest one is flare up. Last week I was hanging out with my friend Julie, and she asked me a very interesting question that actually prompted this part of the podcast. She asked me how I could be in a 2-year-long flare-up and be trying to force a flare-up right now. And I kind of sat there for a second thinking, I don't really know what she's asking. And then it dawned on me that flare-up means lots of different things to us living in the chronic illness space. But anyone from the outside looking in, they're not necessarily going to understand that flare-up can mean many different things. So I did my very best, but here's how I break down flare-ups, and I hope that this can be sent to your friends or family and help them understand what you're saying when you say the word flare-up. I broke it down into 2 different phrases. There's big F flare-up and little f flare-up. Big F flare-up is disease progression. Not just a symptom spiking and then continuing, but a symptom spiking that is so bad, meaning your medication's not working, you probably are looking at a hospitalization. Your condition is so active and it's debilitating. And what we mean when we say big F flare-up is that we're back to square one. It is so emotional and heartbreaking when you're at the big F flare-up. You are throwing everything out that you were just doing. You're going back to square one, back to the drawing board, and hoping and praying that there will be some solution that you will find that will give you back some quality of life. On the other hand, we've got little f flare-up, which is not to be, demeaning of little f flare-up. Little f flare-up still also sucks. But little f flare-up means that we are having a symptom spike. Maybe we're paying because we played. But we have a toolkit, and if we use that toolkit, more likely than not, we're going to feel better. And it does not mean that we have to restart the hunt for new medications. Symptoms can be an increase in fatigue, in pain, in GI issues, in inflammation, and cognitive issues, skin changes, mental health impact, whole 9 yards. Very dependent on your own little snowflake experience of how you present a chronic illness flare-up. And TLDR, what we mean when we say little f flare-up is that I do not feel good. I am canceling my plans. I am focusing on me right now and my health to try to get back on my feet so I can keep living this life that I'm living right now. So the caveat here is that little f flare-up is not time-bound. It can last 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, where you're just at a kind of increased symptom state, but you're not necessarily going back to square one and changing your medication protocol, changing all your lifestyle stuff. You're just trying to figure out little things you can do to give you some symptom relief to feel a bit better. Or, in my case, you can be in a little F flare-up for 2 years where you're just not back to where you used to be, but you're not in a terrible place. But then you do a forced flare-up to try to get into a big F flare-up to figure out if your diagnoses are correct, if your medication's even working, which I guess is going to be a newsflash right now. My medications aren't working. We are going back to square one and starting the whole thing over again. And that I'm going to unpack at a different time because it is too fresh and too emotional right now. Which actually leads me to my next point. The last reason why I think chronic illnesses are so confusing is because the goal of trying to feel better and healing is not to be cured. It's not to be in remission. It's not to feel completely better. The goal of healing with a chronic illness is to just feel better, instead of be all better, which can mean managing our symptoms a bit better and also accepting that there's certain things that we cannot change that are going to be permanent because our diseases are chronic. And that is what we call the duality of life with chronic illness, where you have two truths at the same time. You're striving to feel better and get a little bit better, while also knowing you're not probably ever going to be all better. I'm saying probably because I'm still holding out that one day maybe somebody in med school right now is going to create an amazing cure that actually does make chronic illness not chronic. But for right now, we have to hold both of those truths at the same time. Aim and strive to feel better, and know there's certain parts of our disease that aren't going to change. And that's just going to be there, and that's okay. That mindset has taken me a long time to get to. I've done a lot of therapy. I got into gratitude journaling to try to figure out what parts of my life I am grateful for, what parts of my body am I proud of and grateful for and not angry at. I've connected with other people in the chronic illness community, which has been so helpful. Biggest tip for connecting with people in the chronic illness community is not just finding people with the same disease as you, but finding people that have the same impact to their quality of life and their day-to-day life as you, which will do so many different things. One, broaden your understanding of chronic illness. Two, help you understand that there's a shared commonality among symptoms, the lives we get to lead, the medications we take, the experiences we have, and that oneness, I think, bridges us all together a little bit more. And one of my points and why chronic illness is so confusing, just because someone else has the same illness as you does not mean their life is going to be that relatable to you. So I don't use that as a filter. I just try to find people that have a similar experience or mindset to life with chronic illness and try to buddy up with them. I've also found that finding things I do get to control, like having hobbies, like gardening, or building a chronic illness toolkit. I love geeking out and finding all my wellness tech or wellness habits that really actually do help me feel a bit better. I love having a commitment to having a sunshine mindset. I'm saying sunshine, not positive, because even the sun gets covered by clouds sometimes, and that's not toxic positivity to be a sunshine. And lastly, I think one of the biggest things for helping me get to this mindset is getting out of my own life and giving back to others. I think giving back to others reminds you that we still have things to be grateful for, and we still have privilege in our own lives, despite handling and dealing with these really shitty diseases and situations that these diseases put us in. All that said and done, it is still emotional and frustrating. And this week, I myself was on the floor, sobbing my eyes out, holding Teddy, crying into his fur, cursing at the fact that I am having to go back to square one, that I feel this shitty, that I might have to go to the hospital and look at who knows how long of a hospitalization. Will that impact my holidays? What will changing my medicine look like? Will I get to be a mom still on this timeline? I was in despair because chronic illnesses don't make fucking sense no matter how long you've had one, how long you have wrestled with the mental side of it. They're not fair. They're not understandable, and they're not predictable. But that doesn't mean our lives aren't worthy, that we shouldn't or can't have any joy, and that there aren't still things that we can be grateful for. But I will say that tears do help, but I will say that crying does help. I actually learned this week a very interesting fact about crying. Okay, so you know how when you cry afterwards, you usually feel a little bit better? Like a heaviness has come out of you? I know why now. It's not just cathartic and an emotional release. Your tears contain cortisol, which is the stress hormone that makes us feel all that anxiety and frustration. So when you cry, you're actually getting rid of, releasing that stress hormone through your own eyeballs and making yourself feel better. So, to more hot girl cries because apparently that's healing. And on that note, let's talk about my one brain cell show of the week. And this is going to sound very silly at first, but hear me out because the reason why I'm picking this is actually kind of sweet. So, Bravo just released a new show, which is their remake of Wife Swap. They're calling it Wife Swap, the Real Housewives edition. Off the cuff, it's very silly, but here's the premise of the show. These ultra wealthy Real Housewives of Bravo switch places with a normie who's living a very polar opposite life than this housewife. The wives switch places, I think, for like 2 days. And what every episode is kind of concluded to is that each of those individuals becomes so much more grateful for their own lives that they have, regardless of whatever was going on at home beforehand. And they grow a deep appreciation for this other person. Both parties usually show up at each other's house, judge it right off the bat, kind of, oh, I can never live like this, or oh my gosh, why do they live like this? And by the end of the experiment, they are crying to each other of, I see why you love this so much. I see all the work you put into this. I'm so in awe of you. So the point of the entire show, I think, is to not judge a book by its cover and to find gratitude for the things that are in our own lives, which is kind of beautiful. So I'm going to try to take those notes into consideration as I process my lovely news of the week of disease activity and my meds not working and going back to square one. And hopefully next week I'll come back and have some thoughts on what processing going into a big F flare-up looks like and my plan for attacking it, because I'm going to cry, but I don't quit. I'm going to get back up and keep going. Okay, and on that note, I love you guys. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of Calling in Sick. As a reminder, I would love for y'all to like, follow, subscribe, save, share with your friend, do all of the things. It truly helps grow this community, and it helps these episodes reach the people that need them the most, whether that's for an educational piece, to have a little laugh, or to not feel so alone. As a reminder, Calling in Sick sits on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and anywhere else where you can find your listens. From the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for calling in sick with me every Monday. It's been an honor and a pleasure so far, and I can't wait to continue building this community with y'all. Love you.